How you doing? My name is Ken Kinter, and I'm an assistant professor at Rutgers University. This presentation was put together by myself and my colleague Jen Sperduto, and it is called Social Skills Group Training. Now, this is an update for the third edition of the Social Skills Training for Schizophrenia book, which you see here by Mueser et al. And it's meant to help you implement social skills at your facility, social skills training, specifically if you're using this book, which we, of course, recommend. So if you like what you're hearing, go tell somebody. Comments are welcome, and we're also always looking for new material to present on. So feel free to help us out with that. And as always, we appreciate your time and attention. So as I mentioned, this is a new version for the third edition of the book. It's also not meant to be an introduction to social skills groups. This video, which is on the Rutgers page, as well as my own personal YouTube channel, Group Facilitation Part 3, and the address is here. That might be a good place to start. If you're just learning about social skills groups, the why and the how, this might be the place to go. And then this one, if you're looking to implement this specific book. So we belong to something called the Inpatient Psychiatric Rehabilitation, the Institute, called IARP, and the State Hospital Psychiatric Rehabilitation Initiative. And what that is an affiliation between Rutgers University and the state psychiatric hospitals of New Jersey. Our goal is to improve the quality of care, improve working conditions, and also make these facilities safer. And through the Institute, we reach out from New Jersey into the rest of the country, into the rest of the world. So this presentation is made possible by the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services and is a collaboration with the New Jersey Department of Health. Without their financial and other types of support, none of this would be possible. So credit where credit is due. So as I mentioned, the intro and the whole why and the background of social skills is in this other video. So specifically in dealing with this book, I'm assuming that your goal is to be able to help you improve the social skills group and hopefully improve the lives of the people participating in that group as well. So here's what we're going to be covering here. We're going to talk a little bit about the focus of the group and why we do social skills group. We're going to show in the book the assessment of skills and interests to get you started in your group, the 4 core social skills, the different categories of social skills, and we're going to focus in on the new content. The second edition was great. If you have that one, that is a great place to start from in running social skills groups. But I also really encourage the third edition, and we'll talk about what the new one brings to the table, and I believe really improves on what was already a great product. So the way the book is laid out is kind of a 4-module or 4-step plan. One is, as we said, the focus and the why. 2 is assessment, being able to assess what you do well, what you maybe don't do well, and what you might want to do better. Then we talk about the 4 core social skills, which we'll discuss more in a little bit, with the lesson plans to map out your groups for you. And that's one of the nice things about this book is it really gives you the recipe so you can just use that and go from there. We're also going to talk about the different skills, categories, and rationales that are there, including all of the new ones that they talk about. So we're going to start out with what the 4 types of social skills are. And they fit into these 4 headings of expressive, receptive, interactive, and situational. Expressive is outgoing, what you say to other people and how you say it, both verbally and non-verbally. And we cannot overstate how important the non-verbal part of communication is. Often it's more reliable than the verbal part of communication. Everything from your tone of voice to your distance, movements, all that kind of stuff. I mean, literally, if you couldn't hear the words or understand the language, you would still get an idea of what's going on from the nonverbals. Receptive skills. This is what's incoming. This is how you perceive people communicating with you. You're recognizing all of these things in someone else. So expressive is what you're doing going out. Receptive is basically the same things coming in. And then you have interactive skills, which is the whole thing about timing and a communication being shared, you know, a back and forth between people, kind of a tennis match. You have the ball going back and forth instead of one person hanging on to it the whole time. And then you have situational skills, which are things that are very specific. Think like job interview skills or a particular situation you have to deal with, maybe dealing with situations with addiction relapse, things like that. So very specific things that you might not use most of the time, but in a certain situation, specialized situation, they can become very important. So how you assess this off the bat is this is an example from the book Social Skills, Interest, and Perceived Proficiency Checklist. So again, this is a list of what I do well, what I want to do better, and what I don't do particularly well. And you see the four core social skills that we were just talking about: listening to others, making requests, expressing negative feelings, and expressive positive feelings. Now, just as a side note, this part doesn't necessarily have anything to do with mental illness. I'm sure none of us are perfect at all four of these categories. I think we're all works in progress in these areas, which is then attenuated if someone's had to deal with either a severe medical problem, an addiction, or mental illness, or if they have cognitive challenges. So then under the heading of that, you have these more specific skills, for example, conversational skills. How do you start a conversation with someone that you don't know? How do you keep a conversation going? How do you appropriately end a conversation? So you have these sort of macro skills, but then you also have these micro skills that, are essential to having those macro skills lined up. And again, this is part of this is a mental illness thing, and part of this is not a mental illness thing. Starting a conversation with a stranger can be difficult regardless of what the circumstances are. And also, social skills are moving targets. What is socially acceptable at one point in time may not be at another. If you think of something like shaking hands or a hug, the appropriateness of that is influenced by a lot of different factors, and you can't just treat one all the same way. It's actually in the era of COVID, it's been interesting to see what's happened to the handshake. So, use of the manual in the textbook, again, we're going to encourage. It's a great book. It's very helpful. The only criticism that I would have of it is it's a very big book and it intimidates some people, and people are a little hesitant to start with it. So, that was the motivation behind the Social Skills Group Manual. It's really meant to be a facilitator's guide to help you use this book better. In the event that you're not going to be able to read, a multi-hundred-page book, this breaks it down for you much easier so that you can get it started right off the bat. And it's free and it's available through our website. And I think it helps you get a quicker start and more mileage out of the social skills training book. So the four core social skills, as we just talked about: listening to others, making requests, expressing negative feelings, and expressing positive feelings. Now, in addition to that, it also gives you a structure, and there's two ways to look at this, of how to actually do the groups. And in psychiatric rehabilitation, we're really big fans of the tell, show, do model, which is first you discuss something, then you actually show it, and then you give someone a chance to do it, because you want to capture as many different types of learners as you can. People who learn by hearing, by seeing, by doing. You want to catch everybody in this sort of multimodal approach. So how this book lays out all of these groups, regardless of what category they're in: you start with establishing a rationale for the skill, the why. You break it down into smaller steps. And then here's your tell, show, do. You model the skill. You do role plays with the skill. You then get feedback from people. And then you do an exercise with the group. So they've gotten to see the exercise done, but then they also get to do it themselves. And then at the end, doing a practice assignment so this person can then practice it outside of the group setting and gain proficiency of it in between. So again, very similar here. This is sort of the layout. You start out with the goal. This is what we're here to do. Hopefully this is how this is going to help you get where you want to get, whether it's a job, independent housing, tenancy in the community, boyfriend, girlfriend, introduction and rationale, activity, lesson, activity, summary, and then practice assignment before next group. And you just repeat this structure throughout this process. So having learned these sort of macro skills, now we work into the micro skills, where here are many, but not all of the areas that they cover. And all of these have a bunch of different lesson plans and micro skills within them. So everything from simple conversations, friendship and dating, addiction issues, technology-based communication, managing your mental and physical health, basic problem solving. So all of these areas and actually some more are covered. And here are some of the more. So since the second edition, if you're familiar with the second edition, the old one had 58 groups in these 9 different domains. And you've since expanded that to 84 groups and added some additional domains for technology-based communication, for school, and for problem solving. So also if you're doing social skills with adolescents, it's moved more in that direction as well. And as you can see here in the bottom, there's a lot of different content areas in here. They've expanded the section on co-occurring and addictive disorders. They have a focus on people that are early on in psychosis, a particularly challenging group of people due to their age and due to their symptomatology and the newness of that symptomatology. Social skills for technology-based communications, working with older populations, inpatient and residential settings, cultural issues, and gender and sexual identity considerations also. So again, very necessary and very needed additions to what was already a great book. So without going too deep into it, if you think in the last 20 years of where technology-based communication has gone, it's gone from being optional to being everywhere. And there are different generations have different knowledge bases regarding these tech-based communications. I heard someone in a talk refer to digital natives and digital immigrants. So someone my age, I'm in my late 50s, is a digital immigrant. I remember the world before these things happened, and I've learned them as sort of a second language. People who are younger than me, maybe more tech savvy than me, they grew up with these things. They only know the world of the internet and texting and all those sorts of things. So they may be much more familiar with it. Then again, the influence of having a mental illness or an addiction, medical problem, or cognitive deficits may have taken somebody out of that. They may not have that familiarity. But tech-based communication has gone from being a novelty to being the norm. So not having access to that compromises your ability to function in society. And it's a whole other area of social skills. It's not the same as social skills, say, speaking face to face. For example, we talked about generational issues already, but even other differences like what you would say to someone digitally that you know, as opposed to just a group of people overall, say on a social media page or something like that. Synchronous versus asynchronous. Um, what's the difference between when you should call somebody or when you should text somebody or when you should send an email? So there are all of these different categories: disclosure, anonymity, confidentiality, and how to cope with having your healthcare needs met in an online format, which again during COVID became more the norm than the exception. It was forced. So this doesn't do it justice, but each of these is a micro skill that you may struggle with yourself, but certainly our clients may be at a huge disadvantage in that area. So another area that the new edition focuses on is different lengths of stay, how you run the same social skills groups differently in different settings. For example, outpatient, short-term inpatient, and long-term inpatient. And each of those has advantages and disadvantages. For example, in outpatient, you have much more readily access to the community, where you can put those social skills into practice in the real world. Whereas in long-term inpatient, you might not have as much access to the community, but you also have the capacity to have more groups. You may be able to reinforce those social skills in a residential setting over a period of time. You have the capacity to teach more over that period of time as well. So each of these have advantages and disadvantages. Another aspect is cultural considerations. A huge aspect of this multicultural counseling has come. It has a long way to go, but it's come a long way in the last 20 years or so. Particularly in the example of, we probably started out with not talking about culture at all, which didn't help very much. And then that was replaced with, okay, we counsel this group of people like this and this group of people like that. And it was kind of stereotyping to a certain degree. Now we're more concerned with the individual themselves. So, for example, if a person is from Puerto Rico, we're not trying to figure out what everyone in Puerto Rico is like. We're trying to figure out what that person is like, which may or may not represent the typical person from Puerto Rico. So, as part of these social skills groups, you may have to learn about things like proxemics. There are some cultures and some groups of people that are more famous for being up close and in each other's faces, and maybe other people who aren't. If you ever saw the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, you get a pretty good example of a collision of cultures between two families, specifically in the idea of distance and physical contact and, in a word, intrusiveness, something along those lines. Um, Having individual goals as opposed to group goals, which one of those is more, in line with the culture of the client. And I really like what they brought up here, the idea of a cultural informant, and that the person advises you not only about their culture, but more specifically their place in it. We're not looking for that person to be the ambassador of all people that fit in that group. We're just interested in how they are with it. But at the same time, it does help you to educate yourself about cultures to a certain degree and how you may interface with them. Again, social skills can be very dependent on cultural features. I'll give you an example. I worked with the Orthodox Jewish population in Lakewood, and it was not okay for men to shake hands with women, but it was okay for men to shake hands with men. Now, a man refusing to shake a hand with a woman instead of handing her a business card in some ways might be viewed as sexist. In another way, it may also be viewed as a religious observation. They might look the same from a distance, and if you don't know the difference, you can make the wrong assumption that way. There's also a place where they are addressing things like power differentials and intersectionality, which are important in a group setting, especially if you have a group facilitator and you have group participants who may have been marginalized at some point. Again, we don't do any favors by not talking about these things that are very real, in our society. And also, there's a power structure in the group already. The group facilitator as opposed to the group participants, and you want to address that power inequity and hopefully minimize it as much as possible. So, just to kind of wrap up what the book talks about, we talked about the 4 different types of social skills: expressive, outgoing, receptive, incoming, interactive in terms of the exchange, and more specific, situational. There are a large range of social skills, and we all have different levels of competence in them. The challenge is, does someone have a social skills deficit that is holding them back in some way from achieving their goals, whether their goal is getting out of the hospital, getting a job, relationship, just being able to have more friends, whatever that is. If there's a deficit that's holding them back, we want this group to be able to address those. 4 core social skills: listening to others, making requests, expressing negative feelings, and expressing positive feelings. Within each of these, there are numerous social skills, and we're probably different levels of comfortable and adept at each of them. And one of the nice parts about the group is you can let the group participants pick what they want to address, what they feel their greatest needs are, they have the most interest in. The social skills group have a structure that we discussed, which includes tell, show, and do, and also involves role plays and interacting and practice outside of the group. And to refute the old saying, practice does not make perfect, but it does make better. And that's the goal, is to provide a place where a person can be educated about how to improve these skills and actually practice them and put in the work so that they can do better. So the next step for you, dear viewer, if you're still with me, and I hope you are, watch our other videos. Please like our videos and subscribe. Buy the book, preferably the 3rd edition. It's great. It will help you. You can also access our companion manual, which you mentioned is for free and is on our site, which is listed here. If you have any further questions about any of this material, or you would like some assistance in how to implement this, you can also access our website, and we can help take you through this process. You also have my email on the title slide. Feel free to reach out to me as well. And of course, the goal of this whole thing is for you to run better social skills groups and to help your clients. That's the whole point, is to help them get to where they want to be. So here are the references. This is the information about the manual that Jen Sperduto and I have put together, the information about the book specifically. And as always, I thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time with the next video. Take care.